Coming up next, the unbelievable story of the quintessential 80s classic that made it into the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest hike to #1. It came from a strange and entertaining band that was led by a larger-than-life frontman whose botched plastic surgery became his absolute downfall. You'll find out next. He started out as a militant record store clerk, berating customers whose musical taste didn't align with his. He'd even get nasty and throw their purchases back in their face. But then later he threw down a record of his very own, a song that would flood any dance floor or club anywhere. Later it would become the most rehashed karaoke song of the time. The band would have 7 top 10 hits over just a couple of years, even though to this day people all think of them as a one-hit wonder, but they weren't. The problem is, the moment the 80s ended, the band vanished. But then 21 years after the song hit #1 in 1985, it hit #1 again. Find out how, coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you remember roller skating to the top 40 hits of the 70s or the 80s, back in the day, you're going to dig this channel of daily nostalgia. Make sure that you subscribe below right now by clicking on the big red button, click the bell and all that good stuff so you know when our latest and greatest, our videos and interviews are coming out. We have some great interviews coming down the pike. So it's time for another edition of one of my favorite series we do on here, Bottle Lightning. This, of course, is where we celebrate a song or an album that was king for a day, or, many days. Here we honor artists and bands that rocketed up the charts, but for reasons unknown, they weren't able to sustain that success long term. Called by a lot of people one-hit wonders, it's kind of a tired thing. We celebrate them instead as lightning in a bottle. Today we're diving into the story of Dead or Alive and their breakthrough smash hit, You Spin Me Round Like a Record, parentheses. Championship Vinyl, that record store from the John Cusack film High Fidelity. As cool as it was, it had nothing on Liverpool's Probe Records. Small independent English record store was mostly staffed by eccentrics and misfits, including one Pete Burns, frontman of Dead or Alive. Pete Burns would work at this place, Probe Records, for a while as he was chasing his dream of cutting his own hit record. So, think back to Jack Black's character Barry Judd in High Fidelity. Music snob if there ever was one. Sharp wit. Judd was in the habit of insulting customers if, he didn't like their taste in music.
Tacky crap, that's why not. Do we look like the kind of store that sells I just called to say I love you? Go to the mall.
Pretty funny stuff. Okay, now turn Barry Judd up to 11. This was Pete Burns. He turned customer mockery into an art form. Pete Burns went beyond your typical run-of-the-mill musical snobbery. He acquired a reputation for full-on terrifying customers that would come in, routinely throwing their purchases at him if he disapproved of their selection. The Clash, Elvis Costello, OMD, Kiss, Rush, forget about it. You could expect at least a verbal whiplashing if you brought any of those to the counter, which is weird because they're amazing. But anyway, let's just say from the start, Pete Burns had some very strong opinions about music. Speaking of the start, Pete formed Dead or Alive in 1980 after stints in various local Liverpool bands, including Mystery Girls and Nightmares and Wax. Dead or Alive's early music that was heavily influenced by punk rock and new wave had a raw, energetic sound that reflected the era's DIY ethos and, rebellious spirit. Describing the band's sound, drummer Steve Coy said, "Our music is a mixture of pop music, dance, techno, rock music. It's a unique fusion, and there's nobody that sounds like we sound. Nobody makes records like we make." In addition to Burns and Coy, the rest of the classic DOA lineup, Dead or Alive, that was rounded out by Timothy Lever on guitar and Mike Percy on bass. In 1983, Dead or Alive released their debut LP, Sophisticated Boom Boom. The record received mixed reviews, sold modestly, but it did feature the band's first top 40 UK single, That's the Way I Like It. Of course, a remake of the 1975 hit by Casey and the Sunshine Band. That's the way I like it. Dead or Alive's second album, Youthquake, that was released on May 3rd of 85. Stylistically, it showcased the next step in Dead or Alive's unique dance pop new wave blend called High NRG. The record was actually produced by the legendary British team of Stock Aitken Waterman, or SAW for short. Of course, the trio would go down in history for their work with a number of successful pop acts that happened in the 80s and 90s. These guys produced more than 100 top 40 hits, including smash hits for artists like Kylie Minogue and Bananarama, which gives us the perfect opportunity for this. And he approached the production team about taking him on. Waterman, who had seen Burns in Dead or Alive on Top of the Pops, said that they caught his eye immediately, and a partnership was struck between the two. Definitely a good move on their part, since Dead or Alive gave them their first #1 hit in the United Kingdom. More on that in a second. Now, Youthquake would go to #9 in the UK and #8 in Canada, and although it would only reach #31 in the US, it would still certify gold. Overall, the record was well received by critics and audiences and helped establish Dead or Alive as one of the leading acts of the mid-80s dance scene. Youthquake, that included multiple singles, including Lover Come Back to Me, Into Deep, and My Heart Goes Bang, Get Me a Doctor. Though outside the club scene, Dead or Alive would mostly be remembered for one song. Today's spotlight track, You Spin Me Round Like a Record. It's an 80s dance pop classic all the way through. Song not only features some serious synth hooks, also Pete Burns' distinctive vocals steal the show. As far as writing the track, it was a collaborative effort between Burns and the SAW production team. Recounting the song's origins, Burns said, "How did I write Spin Me? I listened to Luther Vandross's I Wanted Your Love. It's not the same chord structure, but then that's the way I make music. I hear something and I sing another tune over it. I didn't sit and study the Luther album. I heard the song and it locked." Now, Burns also drew inspiration from another record, Little Nell's See You Round Like a Record. Putting the two ideas together, he knew that he was on to something big. However, Dead or Alive's label Epic, they weren't behind the song at all. Burns actually had to take out a 2,500-pound personal loan to fund the recording of the song because the label didn't believe in it. Can't believe how many times this happens. They're crazy. Still, Pete Waterman, he had a lot of confidence in the track. He knew it was something special from the first time that Burns played him the demo. He was sure it was going to be his production team's first #1 hit. Interviewed about it years later, Waterman said that Pete Burns walked into his life with a piece of gold. All he had to do was polish it. I got to be your friend now, baby. Once Dead or Alive got in the studio with the production team, it was anything but smooth sailing from there, I tell you. Imagine multiple producers, a programmer, an engineer, an assistant engineer, and 4 band members all in the control room together, all arguing about how to finish this track the right way. So reportedly, when it was time to mix it, it became a very tense situation. According to engineer Phil Harding, Pete Burns and Steve Coy, they still wanted to record more parts for the song before they mixed it. But producers Mike Stock and Matt Aitken, they were adamant that this was ready. Lines were drawn in the sand from there, and what you had was a good old-fashioned control room standoff, like in the Old West. No one would budge an inch. Things just about got physically violent from there. Flashback to Burns back at Probe Records. Not sure if Pete threw anything this time around, but things were getting really heated as I understand it. So finally, Pete Waterman, he stormed into the room and he sent everybody home. Get the hell out of here. He says, there's no way in hell we're going to get this track finished with so many opinions flying around the room. Waterman and Harding, they pulled an all-nighter from there and they mixed the track without any interference. By the time everybody rolled in the next morning, they were all completely satisfied. In fact, Pete Burns was ecstatic. Now, for a little more insight into the creation of the mix, Waterman told BBC Music Magazine that You Spin Me Round had Richard Wagner's classic Ride of the Valkyries all over it. What I take from him is pathos, string runs, and harmonies. My job is to make sure you don't spot it. We changed a few things around, but if you listen to You Spin Me Round, the strings are straight off Valkyries. Now, lyrically, this song is so simple, so fun. You know, with Pete Burns going on about his new crush, about how they spin him right round like a record, baby. The lines make for one of the more memorable hooks of the 80s for sure. But beyond that, I suppose you can even read a little into that turntable metaphor. Maybe spinning around describes the feelings of falling head over heels for someone, I don't know. It's just the most fun, catchy, sugary slice of 80s pop ever. And that's more than enough reason to play it all the time. Although, if we're being honest, it might be one of the most overplayed records of the decade. More on that in a second. I love it, don't get me wrong. So after the song and the record were delivered to the label, the response was actually universally negative. They called it awful. They said it was rubbish. According to Pete Burns, they had no faith in the song at all. I mean, it's a familiar story. We talk about it a lot. It's one that has a happy ending, though. Specifically, a #1 ranking atop the UK charts. But it'd take a while to get there. In fact, because of the label being unwilling to get behind the song at all, it took a Guinness record-setting 4 months for You Spin Me Round to go to #1. Released on November 5th of 1984, it actually bounced around the middle of the charts for months. Then it finally made a beeline to the top of the charts on March 9th, 1985. Long time for that to happen. In the US, You Spin Me Round Like a Record climbed to number 11 on the Hot 100, and it went to number 4 on the US dance charts. Elsewhere, the song went to number 10 in Austria, number 9 in Finland, number 6 in Poland, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. To number 3 in Belgium and Australia, number 2 in Italy, and number 1 in Switzerland, Ireland, and Canada. And of course, the UK. I mean, how's that for a little bit of vindication? Of course, part of what made this song so successful, so memorable today is its iconic music video. Directed by Vaughn Arnell and Anthea Benton. The clip features a range of eye-catching visual elements from the opening disco ball to flying flags, and most memorably, a rotating platform that spins the band members right round like a record, baby. Pete also sports a series of outlandish outfits and accessories, including the iconic Burns eye patch. I mean, it's one of the most memorable music videos of the 80s for sure. Overall, the whole thing perfectly captures the energy and the feel of this classic song. Today, it's still, like I said, an 80s favorite. Just ask Jimmy Fallon and Paul Rudd. In 2019, Fallon and Rudd recreated the video shot by shot for The Tonight Show. Perfect. Their version, of course, has Rudd wearing Burns' eccentric wardrobe, including the eye patch, as he lip syncs along. I gotta say, I was really impressed with this version. Channeling his inner Burns, Rudd really takes his performance to the next level. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I'll link to it below. It's a really good laugh. Actually, the parody now has 10 million views on YouTube. Also, I don't know if I'm the only one who noticed this. You know, as a kid, the first time I saw the music video on MTV, Pete Burns, in this video, he sure looks like he's taken some wardrobe ideas from the classic anime cartoon Captain Harlock. I remember we used to rent those from the video store. We didn't know what it was, but we really liked it. Of course, the original Dead or Alive video eclipses every cover or parody with almost 250 million views. Part of what has kept You Spin Me Round Like a Record from being forgotten is its frequent re-releases and its appearances in pop culture. I mean, it's one of the most popular songs of the 80s for sure, but also one of the most used songs from the 80s. I mean, if you need an 80s flashback or an 80s themed film or TV show, it's going to be in there. And it made it one of the most overplayed songs of the era. I love it still, but yeah, kind of overplayed. You know, You Spin Me Round, it really captured to me the spirit of the 80s. Anytime you hear the song, it just takes you right back there. But because it was so big, it's kind of overshadowed everything else that Dead or Alive released, leading so many, especially in the US, to assume that this band is a one-hit wonder. But actually, that's not true exactly. Yeah, Dead or Alive was hard-pressed to stay commercially relevant on the Hot 100, which they had just one more hit, the number 15 Brand New Lover in '86. And it also went to number 1 on the US dance charts. And for my money, Brand New Lover is just as great as its counterpart, really. And it went to number 1 on the dance charts. In the 80s, they released 10 top 30 dance hits, including the number 2 hits Turn Around and Count to 10. And another number 1 besides A Brand New Lover, Come Home With Me Baby. 7 of these songs went to the top 10, 7 top 10 hits. It was for the most part, though, that success didn't translate into the Hot 100. But on the dance charts, they're one of the biggest acts of the 80s. But it seemed that the moment that the clock struck midnight on December 31st, 1989, and, the 80s turned into the 90s, Dead or Alive, they were wiped off the musical map. They never had another hit on any chart until their remake of You Spin Me Round in 2003, but no other song that made a dent at all. After the 80s, Pete Burns changed gears. He became a well-recognized figure in his native land, appearing on numerous TV shows and performing sold-out concerts throughout the country, though. Later on in the new millennium, Pete Burns reinvented himself as a reality TV personality and also celebrity Botched Up Bodies in 2016, which is really sad. Burns, who was already known for his distinctive appearance throughout his musical career, he underwent a number of cosmetic surgeries in the 90s and beyond, including multiple nose jobs and lip augmentations. Now, Burns, he was very open about his experiences with plastic surgery, and he viewed it as a form of self-expression, is what he said. However, in 1999, a cosmetic procedure went terribly wrong, and it disfigured his lips. Multiple corrective surgeries were required to deal with this damage. Burns described the experience as an all-out nightmare. Sadly, Pete Burns passed away on October 23rd, 2016 at just the age of 57. The cause of his death was attributed to a massive cardiac arrest. Burns had a history of health problems, including a heart attack that happened in 2013. And he was known to have battled addiction issues. His death was mourned by fans and fellow musicians. I remember the day he died. Very sad. I remember loving Dead or Alive's music growing up. It was not a popular thing to do in the small town of Blackfoot, Idaho, I gotta tell you. I went to school with a lot of jocks and cowboys who were into heavy metal and rap and country music. My friends and I, we were into new wave and punk, the type of music that pissed off jocks and cowboys, for sure. We hated the jocks because of the hell that they put us through with this. I endured a massive share of bullying for my love of the Smiths and The Cure and Depeche Mode and Joy Division and Dead or Alive, amongst others. And then some. It was called about every homophobic slur in the book. It's because of the music I liked. And Dead or Alive, they added flame to the fire for sure. I remember DJing a dance and playing dance mixes of You Spin Me Round and Brand New Lover that kind of turned into the next song. I got threatened by one jock in particular. He said, turn off this blank music, homophobic slur, or I'll pummel you. I refused, and he cocked his fist back about ready to break my face. All of a sudden, this kid who was a senior and probably the best player on the football team, he grabbed his fist from behind and he turned around and threw him up against the wall. And he said, man, leave Reader alone. He's playing one of my favorite bands. I love this song. He's cool. The bully was just shocked. He's like, you like this band? What? Okay, I guess they're pretty cool. He apologized to me because he was made to do so by this cool guy. And then this jock proceeded to have a long conversation with me about all this great music. He's like, hey, can I borrow that? I really want to get those mixes of the song. I, of course, let him borrow the CDs. And again, we have this really cool conversation about Morrissey and Depeche Mode. And that's when I learned that you just can't use stereotypes. Here was an all-star on our football team. Popular jock, one of the most popular kids in school, and he had as big a passion for the music as I did. Then a couple of weeks later, he actually wore a Dead or Alive t-shirt to school. Got to tell you, from then on, my friends and I, we were safe. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Dead or Alive and You Spin Me Around Like a Record. What are your memories of the song, of this band? Do you ever remember their live concert, Rip It Up, live from Japan? Very interesting VHS, I might say, I might add. If you like our content, please subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our musical discussion. It's about keeping the music alive, folks. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.